Oh, hey guys. Glad you made it back. I was about to start reading again. You guys ready to find out if Percy makes it against Medusa? Yeah? Okay, good. I'm glad you're still with me. Alrighty. So, where did we leave off yesterday? Oh yeah, Percy had just gotten some gifts from Hermes and Athena, and he also had to, I guess, face off the three Grey Ladies. But I don't think they were much of a challenge for him. So where we left off with was Athena had given him her blessing and some extra cool prizes, I guess, a shield and a sword to take on Medusa. Let's see what happens, okay? Medusa's lair was having a clearance sale on lawn statuary. Surprise there. Just as the Grey sisters had described, the cave sat halfway up a steep cliff overlooking the sea. The mouth of the cavern and the narrow trail leading up to it were decorated with life-size marble warriors. Some had swords raised, others cowered behind their shields. One dude was crouched with his pants around his ankles, which was a really bad way to be frozen for all time. All the would-be heroes had one thing in common, an expression of absolute horror. As the sun rose over the cliffs, shadows moved across the statues, making them look alive. That did not help Perseus's nerves. Since he was flying, he didn't have to worry about the treacherous path. Since he was invisible, he didn't have to worry about being seen. Still, he was super tense, as I'm sure you would be too. He looked at the dozens of mortals who had tried to do what he was about to do. Each of them had been brave enough to come here. Each had been determined to kill Medusa. Now, all of them were dead. Or were they dead? Maybe they stayed conscious after they returned to stone, which would probably be even worse. Perseus imagined standing frozen forever, no matter how much your nose itched, waiting until you cracked and crumbled into pieces. Yeah, that would be pretty much torture. This time will be different, Perseus told himself. These guys didn't have two gods helping them out. But he also wasn't that sure about that. What if he was only the latest in a long line of godly experiments? Maybe Hermes and Athena were sitting up on Mount Olympus watching his progress, and if he failed, they'd be like, well, that didn't work. Send the next guy. He landed at the entrance of the cave. He crept inside, his shield raised, his sword unsheathed. The interior was dark and crowded with even more marble heroes. Perseus navigated around a spear-wielding guy in full armor, an archer with a cracked stone bow, and a hairy, pot-bellied guy wearing only a loincloth who was completely unarmed. Apparently, the guy's plan had been to surprise Medusa by running in, yelling, waving his arms, and being even more ugly than the Gorgons. It hadn't worked. The farther Perseus went into the cave, the darker it got. Frozen heroes stared at him from their contorted faces. Stone blades poked him in uncomfortable spots. At last, he heard a chorus of soft hissing from the back of the room, the sound of hundreds of tiny snakes. My nightmare. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? His mouth tasted like battery acid. He raised the polished surface of his shield and saw the reflection of a woman sleeping on a cot about 50 feet away. As she lay on her back with her arms folded over her face, she seemed almost human. She wore a simple white dress, and her belly looked unusually swollen. Wait, Medusa was pregnant? Suddenly, Perseus remembered how Medusa had gotten cursed in the first place. She'd been playing hanky-panky with Poseidon in Athena's temple. Did that mean... Oh, gods, ever since Medusa had been turned into a monster, she'd been pregnant with Poseidon's offspring, unable to give birth because, well, who knew why? Maybe that was part of the curse? Perseus's courage faltered. Killing a monster was one thing. Killing a pregnant mother? That was completely different. Medusa turned in her sleep and faced him. Behind her, one of her gold wings unfolded against the cave wall. Her arms dropped, revealing sharp brass talons. On her fingers, her hair writhed, a nest of slithering green vipers. How could anyone sleep with all those little tongues flicking across their scalp? And her face. Perseus almost glanced over to make sure he was seeing it correctly, in the reflection. Tusks like a wild boar's jutted from her mouth, her lips curled in a permanent sneer, her eyes bulged, making her look vaguely amphibian. But what really made her ugly was how her features were so misshapen and disproportionate. The nose, the eyes, the chin, the brow, taken all together, the face was just so wrong. It didn't make any sense. You know those optical illusion pictures that make you dizzy and nauseous if you stare at them for too long? Medusa's face was kind of like that, except 1,000 times worse. Perseus kept his eyes on the reflection in the shield. His hand was so sweaty he could barely hold his sword. The reptilian smell of Medusa's hair filled his nostrils and made him want to gag. Despite the fact that he was invisible, the vipers must have sensed something was wrong. As he got closer, they hissed and bared their tiny fangs. Perseus couldn't see the other two Gorgons. Maybe they were sleeping in another part of the cave. Maybe they were out shopping for snake-friendly hair products. He inched closer until he was standing right over Medusa, but he wasn't sure he could kill her. She was still pregnant, whatever she was. Her ugliness just made him feel pity, not anger. He should be cutting off King Polytictes' head instead, but Perseus, he'd made an oath. If he lost his nerve and backed out now, he doubted he'd ever get a second chance. Then Medusa made up his mind for him. She must have sensed his presence. Maybe her snake hairdo had warned her. Maybe she smelled the scent of demigod. I've been told we smell like buttered toast to monsters, but I can't vouch for that. Her bugged-out eyes snapped open. Her talons curled. She shrieked like an electrocuted jackal and lunged, ready to slash Perseus to ribbons. Blindly, he swung his sword. Ka-flump! Medusa fell backward, collapsing across her cot. Bump, bump, bump. Something warm and wet rolled to a stop next to Perseus's foot. Ew. It took all his nerve not to look, not to scream like a kindergartner and run away. Little dying viper heads tugged at the laces of his sandals. But carefully, very carefully, he sheathed his sword. He slung his shield over his shoulders and opened the leather sack. He knelt, keeping his eyes fixed on the cave ceiling, and grabbed the head of Medusa by its dead, snaky hair. He stuffed the head into the bag and made sure the drawstring was tightly tied. For the first time in several minutes, Perseus exhaled. He'd done it. He looked at the headless monster of Medusa spread across the cot. On the floor, dark blood pooled, swirling and making strange patterns. Was blood supposed to do that? Perseus watched transfixed as a full-size stallion burst out of the liquid like it was charging through a doorway. The horse reared and whinnied, spreading eagle-like wings still flecked with blood. Gross. Perseus didn't realize it, but he just witnessed the birth of Pegasus, the first winged horse. Then the second shape burst out of the blood, a man in golden armor with a gold sword in his hand. Later, he would be named Chrysaor, the Golden Warrior. He must have inherited some of his mother's looks because Percy backed away from him really quickly. You're probably wondering, why were Medusa's kids a golden warrior and a winged horse? And how had they been stuck in her body all those years? Heck, I don't know. I'm just telling you how it was. You want stuff to make sense, you are in the wrong universe. It's true. Greek mythology is cray-cray. I don't know if Chrysaor would have fought Perseus or thanked him or what, but before they could even exchange phone numbers, Perseus backed into one of the marble statues. It toppled into another statue, which toppled into another statue, domino style. And, well, you get the idea. The cave filled with the sounds of shattering stone heroes. Oops, Perseus said. From the left side of the cavern, a female voice hissed. Medusa, what is wrong? From the right, the third Gorgon hissed back. Intruder! Murderer! Percy still wore his invisibility hat, but he wasn't going to trust that to protect him. He kick-started his winged sandals and blasted out of the cave at full speed. The two Gorgons screamed and launched after him. Their gold wings beat the air like crashing cymbals. The sound got louder, but Perseus didn't dare look back. He willed his sandals to give him more speed. The little dove wings began to burn against his ankles. Something scraped at the sole of his shoe, and he had a bad feeling it was a Gorgon's claw. In a desperate move, he spiraled, so the sunlight flashed off the shield on his back. The Gorgon shrieked, momentarily blinded, and Perseus sped upward into the clouds. He had made his escape. Okay, a little bit shorter today, but that is the end of our tale of Perseus and Medusa. But don't be dismayed, because there is still so much more to Perseus's tale. So tomorrow we'll see what happens to him next after he escaped the Gorgons with Medusa's head. Because if you remember, he still has an oath to complete. He's got to show up to King Polydectes' palace with that head. Will he do it? We'll find out tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by, you guys.